Well, I feel this trilogy started with promise with 16 Ways to Defend a Walled City, and while I still enjoyed the trilogy overall, I definitely did feel like there are some diminishing returns with each book, and it kind of felt a little bit too similar. Let's talk, though, about the Siege Trilogy by KJ Parker. Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video we are going to be talking about, yes, the Siege Trilogy by KJ Parker, which is 16 Ways to Defend a Walled City, which is still a fantastic title. How to Rule an Empire and Get Away with It, pretty great as well, and a practical guide to conquering the world. Now these are, I know, not the first series that most people will recommend with KJ Parker, and KJ Parker is still absolutely an author that I plan to read, hopefully quite a lot more of. I'm very interested to check out a lot of KJ Parker's stuff, and I've heard really great things about some of his other books. However, 16 Ways to Defend a Walled City, I loved that title, and that's immediately what drew me to it, is I wanted to see what this was going to be. And I wasn't really sure exactly what it was going to be. I thought it was going to be more of a comedic style, but these are books that are written with a very specific kind of narrative voice, which there's a lot of sarcasm, there's some humor, but it is still dealing with, fairly serious topics as well. It's, a city that's under siege, called the Siege Trilogy, although we're following a different character and kind of a different situation in each one. The first two taking place in the same city, the third one taking place somewhere completely different, but they are all connected. Now, the first book I really, really enjoyed a lot. I thought the style, the wit, the humor, the sarcasm, everything worked really, really well with the narrative voice. We were following an engineer who ends up somehow being in charge of the defense of this city, and it's just kind of, bootstrapping his way, trying to figure it out as he goes along, by using engineering tricks and just being smart and figuring out how to get, by and do all this kind of stuff. There are some things that are a little bit, not the most believable and that sort of thing as well, but there's so much of the stuff that feels sort of tongue-in-cheek that you just, look past it and you're good. And then we get to book two, How to Rule an Empire and Get Away with It, and we follow another character who is, instead of an engineer, an actor, and they find themselves somehow in charge of a city and group of people and have to keep figuring out how to do things by being kind of just smarter and using tricks they've learned from their career. And although it's very different, being an actor, it ends up feeling like just a little bit similar. Especially it's taking place in the same thing not that long actually after the first book, even though these are kind of pitched as accounts that were found later. It felt a little bit similar, although was pretty different because of the fact that it's an actor and there's more going on. But overall, still pretty good, enjoyable. And we get to the last book, A Practical Guide to Conquering the World, where we find this time a translator by trade who finds himself in charge of a bunch of people and just is smarter than everyone and keeps getting, oh gosh, yeah, that is really similar. And so, I say that kind of jokingly, but that's kind of, I feel like, where I ran into the issue. Because although the three characters that we're following in these three books are very different characters, and we have an engineer, we have an actor, we have a translator, and those really, their vocations are very important and inform their characters, but ultimately the narrative just felt a little bit tired and worn out by the time we got to book three. Even though it's a very different location, even though the things happening are very different, it's just kind of the same thing where somebody just keeps figuring something out because they read it in a book or because they know this obscure thing. And we just had a lot of that, and it just became harder and harder for me to suspend my disbelief. Now, again, part of this is, these are accounts from these people that are being found later, and so there's even question, like there's like a note, in several of the books where it's like we don't know how true this account really is, so you can kind of say that. But it's just still, again, it's all the same kind of thing, all the same kind of feel. So I feel like if you enjoyed the first book, you're probably going to enjoy the whole trilogy. If you didn't like the first book, don't continue, because it really is all feeling similar. And just for me, although I gave the last book 3 stars, I actually was tempted to DNF it because I found myself kind of just checked out and not caring a whole lot. But I pushed through, I finished it up, I ended up just doing the rest of it on audio, and was fine. And, the ending, I think, worked and was kind of fun and was fitting to the ending. It did wrap around and include some things from the first two as well. But at the same time, it just, it didn't feel like it was anything different. It felt way, way too similar. And I think that's where it suffered a little bit for me. There's also, with the books too, the things that kind of were quirky and were kind of fun. Like in the first one, we start with the joke of like, oh, I don't remember exactly what I said or how I got away with this or that type of thing, but it's fine. And we kind of gloss over it, but you start to get those in each one, down to in the last one where I feel like there were a bit more flaws, or maybe I just noticed them more, with the character who is a translator. Specifically, many times we're told that they choose their words very carefully. There are other times where they don't choose a word carefully. and sometimes it's done for like, humor, like, oh, this, or maybe you'd call it that, but we're told specifically they always choose their words carefully. And also just very specifically, we have another line again of, I don't even remember what I said, but it must have been pretty convincing. And so some of the lines like that again just start to feel a little bit like, okay, we have this character that's supposed to be smarter than everybody and get away with everything, but we couldn't actually figure out as an author what would they say, so we just don't tell you. And so all of that stuff kind of built up to make this like, okay, I at this point, it's just a little bit tiring going through it again and again. And so, like I said, I think this book is fine. It did some interesting things, had some interesting, commentary on different things as well. We explore religion, different nations, how different nations look at each other as barbarians and that kind of thing. So there were some fun things. This had a lot of the elements that made the first two enjoyable. It's just, again, even spacing out. I read the first two pretty close together, and I thought that was my issue, but it's been a while now, and even spacing out, I still felt the third just a little too close. So it didn't quite land for me, and so this I think I went to like a 5.43 with the rating, so it was kind of a steady decline. Although still, 3 is not a bad book by any means. For me, at least, that's 3 stars. It's a decent, solid book. So I still think this is worth checking out. Again, I really liked the first book, and if you kind of want to just see where things go, it's worth continuing. Just maybe manage your expectations, because we're not really elevating after the first book. We're kind of staying in the same lane and going from there, which isn't necessarily what you want with a trilogy, even one where they're kind of disparately attached, like in this trilogy. So for me, it could have landed definitely a lot better, but I still had an enjoyable time with it. And again, I'm very excited to check out more of KJ Parker's stuff, because from what I hear, this is like it's probably his least like good series that he has. So I'm really, really interested to check out more KJ Parker. Well, that's really it for this one, though. So let me know your thoughts if you've also read this in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. And if you have recommendations for what KJ Parker book I should check out next, definitely let me know. Otherwise, make sure to give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Check the links in the description, as always, for the Patreon if you want to support what I do, as well as the Wizard of the Enclave Discord if you want to chat books, whether these books, other books, really anything at all. It's a lot of fun, and we'd love to have you. And of course, if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe.